What's up, Vanka?
Hello, Vangas.
How is everybody doing? Can you feel it? I can feel it coming in. It's getting closer. It's getting closer.
That's right. Lewis Hamilton's wearing red. He's crashing cars. I can almost taste the drama of this 2025 season. And so thank God we have the guest that we have today, Matt, because today we have an engineer, journalist, author, strategist, and someone who knows more about tires than the Michelin Man. We have Sky Sports F1 presenter and analyst, the one, the only Bernie Collins on the pod.
Thank you for having me. Of all the things I can claim, I cannot claim to be better than the Michelin Man. That's just not possible.
I don't know. Checo in Russia, 42 laps. You knew, Bernie.
I'll tell you, on the pit wall in that instance, I did not know, but we made it work.
You made it work. How much of the job of we're going to get into like all of it, but you just said that was a kind of iconic play that you did, strategy move there. When you make a move like that, okay, we're going to take a risk, we're going to take a gamble. Like, how much of a thing like that is luck? How much of that is just like Checo being great on his tires? How much can you push? Like, what, in the pie chart of a decision like that, like what makes up that pie?
Yeah, you've got like something like that. You've got a decision where you've got a really early safety car. It's earlier than you would normally take it to run one set of tires to the end. But from the position that you're in track, you think it's going to gain us so much positions. We might get lucky with another safety car later on. So there's always something that can play into your favour. It's longer than the tyre guy would ideally go on the tyres. But, Checo can generally make those types of thing work. And, it was really close. You were really, really suffering towards the end. But there's lots that goes into it. You sort of think, your driver, what you think he can do, what you can tell him during the race to try and help him out. And sometimes it is like, well, we've got to give this a go. We've got to give this our best shot. And you're trying to, when you make that decision, you're looking at where are we going to be if we don't do it? Where are we going to be and we do it and it works out? Okay. And where are we going to be if we do it and we have to stop again? So you're running this sort of like risk reward of all the positions that you're in. And that was quite early in my strategy career. So there's a lot of, management involvement in that decision as well. But yeah, it was a really cool thing. And, we got overtaken a few laps from the end and, would have finished fifth if the two that overtook us hadn't crashed. But even fifth was a really good, result from where we were.
I want to ask about safety cars.
Yeah.
So I noticed like a lot of people, I'm always like, why not go long? Always go long. Until recently, there's been fewer safety cars.
Yeah.
And my first question is, why don't you go long always? Because it seems like more often than not, there is a safety car. Well, why is everyone always doing the 2 or 3 stop, the extra stop? And then my second question is, when you're thinking about, will a safety car occur? Are you like, okay, so Nicholas Latifi's still out there. We got a real chance at a safety car. Or, Logan Sargent's out there. Or, okay, Logan Sargent already spun out. So like the chance of a safety car has gone down this much percentage. There's only like, do you look at like who's on the grid? And then does that influence are you looking at like, a certain driver on a certain set of tires? You're like, well, now we got a real chance here. Does that actually happen?
So I'll answer the second part first. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Like you look at the grid, you look at who started on what. Like, for example, you might get someone starting on a hard tire. We really think that's the wrong tire and they'll have a few guys backing up behind them and you'll be like, this is going to go wrong at some stage. People are getting frustrated behind. And like you say, I won't name any names, but you will look at specific drivers and you'll think, yeah, it's going to happen at some stage or whatever. Or you look at maybe the strategy they're trying to do and say like that driver with that strategy, it's just not going to work. So we do look at all of those things and we really look at the risk of something going wrong. We also look at what's happened in previous years. So we look at for a given track like Australia, race one, generally when reliability stuff happens. So we'll roughly know what laps the safety cars tend to come in that race. There's some races, Singapore, where the safety cars tend to happen around the pit stops because someone's done a pit stop, they come out behind a slower car, they get frustrated, that causes a safety car. So we have this like graph of where the safety cars tend to be in a race, and we know the probability of it coming. The going long thing really depends on the race. So if you're thinking of, should you just keep extending the stint, stop when there's a safety car 10 laps after everyone else? It depends on how quick you think the people are going to be after they do their pit stop. So if people do their pit stop and you want to go 10 more laps, but they're already closed up to the back of you, then safety car is a bit pointless. So there's this point of sort of saying, yes, you get a cheaper stop, but you're still behind them anyway. So you're looking at how quickly your tyres are going to go off, securing positions, those types of things. So there's lots going on when you're trying to look at whether you should go long or not. And we've seen it a few times where teams, without risk of being undercut from others, have extended much longer than like the optimum race would be. But for those in the sort of midfield, you're losing so many positions for extended that you might not be able to get back. That means you have to just bank the pit stop, do the best you can do. You're at risk for some others, but it swings and roundabouts.
It just seems like George Russell is always doing that. And because I'm stupid, I'm always like, he's right. I always think George Russell is right.
I don't think that it's like he's right or wrong, but sometimes depending on the situation, when you're the second driver in a team, you don't get the pit stop you want. So then you're into like the suboptimal strategy anyway. So it really depends on the situation. But like equally, drivers like George, drivers like Checo, better at making their tyres last in the first stint anyway. So therefore their tyres are better at the end of that stint and they can do the longer strategy. So it's a complex thing.
How, you have so much data, you just named so many different variables into making a decision. But there's an expectation that you have to make the decision. You have to be quick with it. So you have to be able to digest all this at the same time. We often hear kind of Ferrari being like, "We're checking, like give us a minute, please." And we're all like, "These guys are idiots." But then you just name all this stuff. I'm like, it's shocking that anyone can give a quick decision when you're factoring on all this stuff. So like, I don't know how do you make those decisions? How much of it is like computer generated? How much of it is there like using AI? With the kind of with AI now kind of rising in technology and into being more of a player and globally, like how much of it is that? How much of it is like, you just kind of like a beautiful mind, just like seeing it, like seeing the fucking Matrix,
realizing the picture.
Like, this is the thing, or and did you feel like you got better at that over time? Was that a learned skill? Like, I'm curious in like how those decisions are ultimately made.
Yeah, so it's definitely a learned skill. I think the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, the more confident you'll be at it. The more we do use computer systems a lot. We use a lot of machine learning. We use AI is becoming more and more popular. And mainly at predicting what it thinks your competitors are going to do. So what do we think whoever's next to us is most likely to do in this situation? What have they done historically? What do we think's the best outcome of the race going to be for us? So you look at like outliers and what if everyone pits and we don't, these sorts of things. So there's lots and lots going on computer generation wise. I think the big thing that people don't think of, and maybe that some teams have potentially got wrong in the past, is being ready for it. So we might have a 70 lap race. Every 2 laps, we're asking, if there was a safety car now, what would you do? So you bring the decision ahead of when you actually need to make the decision. So in the laps before a safety car, hopefully you've had the decision. What tyres would you fit if there's a safety car now? Which driver would you box? What would need to change for the other driver to box? So we look at, okay, what if the guy directly behind you is the guy that causes a safety car? Does that change your decision? So we've got lots of these decisions like almost ready to go. And then hopefully what you're doing when the safety car actually comes out is just checking that decision. Because like the shortest lap of the year is Austria, I think, which is like 60 seconds. So
that sounds correct.
Best case,
correct.
like in somewhere like Austria, best case, if you're at the start of the lap when the safety car comes out, you have 50 seconds because you need to give the crew some warning to make a decision. If you've got 2 cars on track, you've got 50 seconds to make 2 decisions. So, with all of the people involved, the tyre guys, the drivers, the race team that you need to get ready, it's better to make the decision a few laps before and then just check it in the 60 seconds. So the really good teams of strategy do it like that.
Are you a nightmare to pick a restaurant?
Yeah, so people assume that because you're good at making decisions on the pit wall, or your whole life has been devoted to making these really quick, snappy decisions and then just sticking to it, that works at home. But it's still like, what do you want for dinner tonight? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. Like that takes us long, if not longer, because I think maybe I'm maxed out.
But do you have like a whole decision? Do you have like a whole decision tree? It's like, well, I like
Right.
Indian, but I had Indian 2 days ago. And,
No, like
a
lot of my work life does not translate to the house.
So there's you don't put in the same sort of thought processes into like picking a dinner spot or where you're going for lunch, or
definitely not. I probably don't put anywhere near the same work in. And I think like we think about things like I just said about being prepared is the most important thing. But yeah, when we go on holiday, we'll rock up on the first night and be like, oh, do you know any good dinner spots? No, nobody's done any research for it. So yeah, I think a lot of it doesn't translate it. And maybe that's just because I'm maxed out at work. There are some things like, particularly when I do anything professionally, I'm probably quite similar to that world. But yeah, definitely when I'm trying to choose somewhere to go for food, it doesn't work.
Well, it's like it's the cobbler's family are walk around barefoot is kind of the deal.
Exactly.
My dad's a kitchen designer.
Yeah.
And my dad does interior design for kitchens specifically. And our fridge broke like years ago. And we just the freezer broke. The fridge worked, the freezer broke, and they just didn't replace it for like 10 years. And my mother got shoulder surgery. and she needed to have like ice on it, like, 24/7.
Yeah.
She had this like sling. And so I would have to go to like CVS 5 blocks from our house and buy ice, which we would keep in like the fruit drawers in the fridge, all because like my dad couldn't bring his work home with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're literally working a warehouse with fridges and you can't bring a fridge here and I have to go buy ice. That's interesting. From what I understand a little bit about your story is that a strategist was not necessarily on the docket for you. That wasn't really part of your 5-year plan, but you kind of found your way into it. Can you explain a little bit about that process for you?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say is I've been pretty poor at having a 5-year plan, and I see real benefits to people that do, but equally it's been really nice just to take the opportunities as they come along. Anything that I'm doing now, the work with Sky wasn't in a 5-year plan either. But yeah, the strategy stuff. So I joined McLaren as an engineer, mainly doing design stuff. I really wanted to get to the tracks. I'd done loads of sort of trackside work with race teams. I was Jensen Button's performance engineer for the 2014 season. And I really enjoyed doing performance engineering. So performance engineering, you work with one driver. You're trying to help him get the best out of the car, be that where he's braking, where he's going on throttle, all these sorts of things. But then the 2015 season, I wasn't going to be travelling with McLaren anymore. So I made the move to Force India, as it was then, which is now Aston Martin. And when I moved to Force India, the job I took on was half performance, half strategy, because that's the job they had going, basically. And I thought, well, that's okay. Like, I can focus on the performance bit and just do a bit of strategy on the side, and it's all going to be okay. But as I joined Force India, Randy, who's now the strategist at McLaren, was leaving Force India to go to McLaren. So we were like switching positions. And when I got to Force India, they were like, well, I know we said half performance, half strategy, but actually now you're just doing strategy because Randy's not here. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know anything about strategy. Like obviously you listen a little bit during the race when you're doing the performance engineering, but it wasn't what I'd chosen to do it. And I think a long time when I was at Force India, I thought, some point they'll employ someone proper to do this, and then I'll just go back to doing performance. And that just never really happened. And I just ended up doing strategy. And then you just got deeper and deeper into it. And I was like, well, it's pretty hard to make the move now backwards, if you like. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Was it like a rom-com? Did you fall in love?
Yeah.
Did you fall in love with it slowly? Like, or were in the back of your mind, you're like, man, I really wish I could be telling Checo where to brake.
Right. Often in rom-coms, there's like forced proximity.
Yeah.
They get stuck in an elevator.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like at the DMV and they're snowed in. Oh, actually, I kind of do like you.
I think
was that your relationship with strategy?
It was definitely like that in the sense that I enjoyed it. Like I did enjoy strategy. I enjoyed selfishly the influence I had over the race. I enjoyed working with both drivers. And for me, it was, a way to be racing, a way to be in the pit wall, a way to be in the thick of it. So I enjoyed all of those things. What I didn't enjoy was, I think many engineers, many technical people in performance engineering, there's like a right and a wrong answer. And it's really exact. Like the brake balance should be 65.2% or whatever it is, like an exact number. And in strategy, often it's a lot of estimation and approximation and these sorts of things. And it took me a long time to get into that and not have just a right and wrong answer, particularly when you're doing like tire models and stuff. So that was a bit that it took me quite a while to get on board with. But I guess I enjoy the adrenaline of making the decisions. I enjoyed being on the pit wall, and how it worked out. So yeah, it was something that slowly over time, I think I was sort of listened intently to the performance conversations. It was a bit like, oh, I might do something different or whatever. But yeah, I did enjoy it.
Bankers, as you know, we have teamed up with BetMGM this season, and we are using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code DADDY, and you will get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, and you sign up using the bonus code DADDY. Because we're fun, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code DADDY when you sign up. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code DADDY and get your first $1,500 first bet offer today. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY for New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP for Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 for Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF for Indiana. 1-800-981-0023 for Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code DADDY and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. So when you find out like it's going to be strategy, like no more performance engineering, it's strategy. Like, what's the first thing that you start to be like, oh shit, I need to study up on this? Like, where do you first go? What's the that first day of homework, for if you will? Like, what are you researching, looking up?
Well, my first, I had a few months before I left McLaren when I knew that I was going to be doing strategy. So sort of watching the strategy of the races much more intently, trying to get my head around what was going on, trying to learn a bit more about the tyres, which I hadn't necessarily interacted with loads before. So there's those things. Like the way it worked in reality was a bit crazy because I had one race, which I think was Monaco, where I went into mission control and watched what Randy did and just sort of sat there and tried to take it in. And then I had one race where I tried to do as much of it as possible and he just watched what I did. And then in the third race, he was gone. So it was like, okay. So that was like a really intense few weeks. And I think the thing is like, you just try and make the big decisions as well as you can and then slowly work your way down. So there are some things which you can lean a lot on people for, like you've got a tire modeling group, you've got an engine group, you've got all these people that like know their areas really well. So you just need to really lean into those people. So yeah, I think the first thing is like getting the basic right. Like, what's our base strategy? Like, is it a 1-stop? Is it a 2-stop? Those are like, that's like, day one. And then you slowly, like we talked about, try to get better at your safety car decisions, like how you're going to interact with stuff. So, yeah, it was that first year, I imagine I needed a lot of support from everyone around me.
But you say that there's no right answer when like I feel like when I'm looking at the television, even I'm like sometimes like, well, that was wrong.
The wrong answer.
Like that was the wrong. And like even like, or even if it doesn't, sometimes even like right away, I'm like, why are they doing that? And I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But
we're all like that. Don't worry.
but at least like a few minutes out or like an hour later or at the end of the race, you're like, well, if hindsight, you actually realize what the right answer was. And even if you're a genius, like, you know, hindsight's 2020, do you ever like, I think you mentioned in your book that you actually can review and say, well, actually, that was the wrong answer. We cost ourselves 20 points. And if we were to go on a time machine, the right answer was this.
Exactly.
But you can't know you can't know then what you know now. And like how much of hindsight can like help you in the next race and how much of that is like self-flagellation.
Yeah, no, I think it's a real mix. So like to go back to what I said is like when you're working out, I don't know, like you're working out a brake balance, that is a very exact number. When you're working out like tire degradation, for example, you look at like field average tire degradation, it changes from one driver to another, you're approximating over 20 laps. So it's a much more estimated number. Like to get tire deg is a much more estimated number. But to know which lap to stop on, then 100% there's a right and wrong answer. And in hindsight, 2020, there's a right and wrong answer. The way you sort of deal with it is you go, why did we make the decision that we did at the time? And you look at all of the other teams and you go, okay, if they didn't stop on that lap that we did, why not? Did they know something that we didn't know? Like, how do we know that next time around? So do we improve our software? Do we improve our communication? You know, are we not listening to the right things, or have we not prioritized one bit of data more than another, whatever? So like every race you're trying to improve on the mistakes that you made the race before. And like the most difficult thing on the pit wall is like, to go back to your going long thing, I've made like many pit stops where the guys come in, stopped, and he's just leaving the pit lane and the safety car comes out. And you know you've done the wrong thing. It's like everyone on the pit wall, like people will be like slamming the pit wall. Like everyone knows that you stopped on the wrong lap. Like if you go back then and look if you go back 2 days later and look at the race and go, is there any way we could have preempted that safety car? You know, like the drivers you listed earlier, were they always going to crash one lap later? Was there something on radio? Was it getting wet? Whatever. And if you kind of preempted it, then actually you probably made the right decision. But if you could have in any way, then how do you not make that mistake next week?
So there are wrong decisions that you make that are like, well, actually they were the right decisions because our process was correct.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because you can't like, you know, sometimes you can't preempt like someone breaking down with an engine failure, for example, because that's just like if you always waited for the engine failure, most of your races would be terrible. But if you could see that someone was struggling with their tires or complaining on the radio, or was like, even with the engine failure, like was there some radio comms that you missed that indicated there could be something wrong with that car, or was their GPS slow, or you know, whatever. So you will try and go back and say, is there any way that we could have known that was going to happen?
Brian, it's like us in Vegas.
Yeah.
It's like you want to play the right hand.
Yeah.
Like, did I play, even if I lost, I played the hand the right way.
Right.
Did I play that hand the right way?
Playing blackjack was like, that's what I was supposed to do. That's what I was supposed to do. But I'm curious because I feel like you're touching on a kind of interesting thing of you know, people with not brains like Matt and mine, but brains like yours and the other smart people that work in this field, that, you know, there's certain things where it's like, yeah, you get the right answer and it's all about like the system works, and there must be like a degree of comfort in the like control of that versus the strategy, which is just more like gambling. And it's more that's out of your hands, and you try to be in control as much as you can, but ultimately there's things that are beyond your control that actually feels more representative of life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if your personality was like one that was like, no, fuck life. I hate the ambiguity of life. That's why I like these systems where like A plus B equals C, and now all of a sudden you're like, did you have to like, was it annoying to have to deal with like the same ambiguity that you deal with like on an everyday basis?
Yeah, you know, it is that. And I think that's what sets apart like really good strategists is the teams that are really good at strategy is they deal with those curveballs really well, like because they're prepared for them, because they're like discussing what's going to go on next, got a good relationship with the driver, whatever the case may be. But like sometimes, we've had races in the past. I've had races in the past where we've made what I thought was every decision correctly and it still didn't work out the right way. Or, often when you're in a midfield team, you do like everything as you think it should have been done. You probably couldn't have changed your pit stop and you still finish like outside the points. So there are definitely frustrations that like you can't get away from. But then there are races where, it just all comes together and you sort of, the difficulty is that if you just, like a blackjack thing, if you just gamble every week and make some crazy decisions, maybe one week it'll work and then you look like a god. And then, but like the other 10 weeks, it won't work. So on average over the year, your results are going to be pretty poor. So it's all about trying to make good decisions consistently. And like sometimes you get a run of qualifyings or races or whatever, and it just feels like someone's hitting you with a bat, like every decision for whatever reason has not gone your way and you just feel a bit broken down by the system. But you just have to keep, you have to keep going. And in many ways, the beauty of F1 is, particularly when you're in a race, you make a decision, like one lap, it's wrong. You don't really have time to mull it over. Like you need to sort of learn from it, but like the next lap's coming at you thick and fast. So, and the next car is coming and the next decision's coming. So pretty quickly you have to move on. And then post race, you get into the, okay, well, we need to go back and look at that. But the decisions are pretty relentless.
So you talk a lot about, you have these computers, you have these models, you have these softwares. You had all this crap at Force India, Racing Point. I'm sure they have these tools at Ferrari, and then some. How come with all these tools, and they probably have like 10 of you, right? How come Carlos Sainz is like, fuck it, I'm just going to do everything? Like, how do we get there?
I think.
How do we get to Vettel being like, fuck this, I'm doing it myself?
Well, yeah, and it was a big worry when Vettel came to us, right? Because he was so outspoken about the strategy. But I think like part of the problem is in like the question you posed. So if there's only one of you, it's pretty easy to make a decision. Like you just make a decision, people get on board with it, it's gone. And like I was very lucky at Force India or Racing Point as it became, or Aston Martin, that when I made a decision, very rarely did the management get involved. Hardly ever did anyone that was like in the management team go, oh, I'm not quite sure about that. So you would make your decision, right or wrong, and then you would review it after the race. So I never had to like check the decision so much. It wasn't like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And then that person had to go, oh, what do you think? And I think some teams have been subject to that in the past where there's this, oh, I don't want to put my neck on the line because I don't want to get fired from Ferrari. So I'm going to ask the guy above me and see what he thinks. And then he's going to ask the guy above him and see what he thinks. And like, I don't know because I'm not on that pit wall, but that's the impression I get. And that's why it takes too long to make the decision. And the driver just says, well, I'm going to do this because I've not heard from you guys in like 2 minutes. So, and I think just from like observation on the outside, listening to some of their radio, I think Fred's making a really big difference there. I think he's beginning to like build trust in people to make their own decision, stick by it, and then move on. So I think we've seen over the past 2 years a strengthening, because none of the people on the pit wall in any team are idiots. They're all intelligent people. So it's just about empowering them to make the decisions that they think are right and then, learn and keep moving from them. But like I said, I don't have any insider knowledge, it's just opinion.
That's all we are. It's our entire show.
I'm curious of like if the first time that you kind of felt like I made a decision like that and like it worked out, and also the first time that you made a decision like that and it didn't work out, and kind of like what were those experiences like?
Yeah, I think there's some like really good examples. So we had a Brazil the year, I don't remember, but it was a wet race in Brazil. The entire race was wet. And it was a race that we didn't make a single pit stop, which from the outside is like, must have just had loads of cups of tea. But like, the way I sell it to people is every lap that you decide not to stop, you've also made a decision. So we're still making decisions every lap.
Right.
But basically there was a load of red flags. It was Nico and Checo at the time. Nico crashed out, but Checo was still going. So Checo was like P3 a few laps from the end, and then he got overtaken by Verstappen. And it was one of those races that stood out to me because I felt like every decision that we'd made was right. Every call that we'd made, like waiting for the red flag, keep going, like the tires that we fitted, it was all pretty bang on. But afterwards, it was seen as that we'd lost out because we got overtaken by Verstappen. I was like, well, Verstappen should have never been where he was. Like, they made mistakes. That's why we were ahead. Like, we still finished much better than we should have done. So it was one of those ones where it felt like, yeah, like that has come good. Or like the Russian one you mentioned, you know, like the call came good. There have been a few others, like the Bahrain win with Checo, the Sakira win. Like that was one where we made a decision to stop lap 1. That came good. There's another race, like normally it's the wet races that really stand out, but it was like a wet race in Germany, where we made some decisions with Lance, and like we went from like 10th to last, but I mean last by like a lap down. Like we made some horrible decisions, like really shitty decisions through the race. But then on the last like safety car, someone else in the pit will actually come up with a mega decision. So we made this mega decision a few laps from the end, and we ended up on the podium. And then you get to the airport and like all the press and stuff are like, wow, amazing race, like you guys really aced it. And it was like, well, no, we made one good decision, but we made about like 20 really shocking decisions. So I came away from the race feeling like I'd had a horrible day out, and everyone's congratulating you, and you're like, oh, okay, I can't explain this to everyone I speak to, but okay, thanks. Move on.
Speaking of Lance, walk us through that pole. Were you influential in, you know,
that was like
a
wet qualifying?
Yeah. Right, in Turkey, right?
Yeah.
Turkey?
So it's one of the things where like wet qualifyings in particular are a bit crazy because there's just so much coming at you so quickly. Everything's changing so quickly. The difference between like a fast and a slow lap is massive. And it's really hard to get everything exactly in the right window, like the tire temperatures, where you are on track, how late you cross the line. And it was one of the ones where just all of those things and all of the systems worked really well together to make sure we were on track at the right point and set the lap at the right point. And you can sort of, and even things like the lap time you're predicting you're going to end up with changes quite quickly through the lap. So you're sort of looking at it going, yeah, this is good. And then by the end, you're like, okay, yeah, like much better than we thought. But, you know, it's one of those things that then it brings, any result like that's a fantastic result for the team, of course. And then it like suddenly step into the next day as a strategist. So you go from like Saturday night where you're on pole, but you shouldn't be on pole, you know, like just looking at car pace.
Right.
So then when you do your like dry model for the race, you end up with a race prediction from a strategy side where you finish like 8th. And everyone's like, oh, that's too like skeptical. You should be more optimistic. And I'm like, well, like I can only run the numbers, you know, like I can make us look faster, but then when I make us look faster and say we're going to win the race, when we don't win the race, you'll all be coming to me going, why did you not win the race? So it's like there's all of these things. You're always a person in the team who's trying to set like some realism and where your race target still is. And whereas actually people want to build on the success of a pole. So it's always a bit, you always feel stuck in the middle.
All right, guys, we're here to talk about our favorite sponsor, Dollar Shave Club. It's no surprise that facial hair is personal. It grows on your face. We all grow it, shave it, style it differently, and we think that's pretty fucking great. It all makes us more interesting. That's why in this club, we make the razors and you make the rules, baby. That's right. Your own personal style. You could be like Lewis Hamilton in like 2007 when he had that crazy beard. You could do that with Dollar Shave Club. Make a fucking splash with your facial hair for once. I'm not going to lie. I thought the Dollar Shave Club just made razors, but they do so much more than that. Whether you're going smooth shaven or maintaining a beard, Dollar Shave Club offers shave and grooming products that are always high quality and never, ever overpriced. Let me introduce you to some of their top sellers that we're going to make your grooming routine feel like a spa. First up, we got the Dollar Shave Club Series 6 Blade Razor. This isn't just any razor, okay? It's like a mini vacation for your face. With 6 stainless steel blades and vitamin E infused lubricant strip, the razor delivers the closest, most comfortable shave imaginable. It's so comfy, your skin might want to just take a nap afterwards. Plus, the precision trimmer is perfect for those little detail areas because we know how important those are. Don't have, a perfectly shaved face with a hair sticking out your ear, a hair coming off the edge of your neck. It can ruin a whole vibe. So don't do it. Get Dollar Shave Club. That'll make it happen. Also, they have an amazing series of products that prep your skin for your shave and take care of it after. We got the shave butter. It's the top selling shaving aid. It's true. I use it and it's so much more helpful than when you put all the white, puffy gunk on your face because you're like, am I even getting this stuff? This goes on clear so you can see exactly where you're shaving. They have the shaving cream, so rich you'll need a Prem-Up thick and cushiony cream for a classic smooth shave. If you like that big look of all this stuff on your face, you can get that. They got the prep scrub, which is it's basically like it exfoliates and gets the hair sticking nice and up so they're ready to be shaved down. And then the post-shave dew, a lightweight post-shave hydration for superbly smooth skin hydration without the heavy. But don't take our word for it, Vegas. Try it for yourself at Dollar Shave Club. Products are now available everywhere, so you can order them from their website, Amazon, or get them at your favorite retailer near you. Alternatively, you can visit their site right now for 20% off $20 or more. Get your products delivered right to your door. Visit dollarshaveclub.com/redflags and use the promo code REDFLAGS to get 20% off $20 or more. And remember, whenever you shave, welcome to the club. Vegas, I have to tell you about this game-changing product that I use every night before a big night out. If I'm going to be drinking, I use this product. It's called pre-alcohol. Let's face it, after a night of drinks, I'm 33 now. I wake up in the morning, I feel like death. But that's until I found pre-alcohol and Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration. All my life, it's told it's dehydration. You just gotta drink water. No. I can't drink water through literal toxic byproduct in my gut, baby. That's what's to blame for my rough next day, but the pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I have used this product many times before, and let me tell you, it works. I tell my friends about it. I say, you're not going to believe this, but after this night where I drank, you know how guys like to calculate your drinks? I had 3 beers, 4 Negronis, 2 shots of tequila. I felt like death. No, not with Z-Biotics. With pre-alcohol, I can stay on track and not let winter travel and celebration like Valentine's Day coming up, the big game, or Mardi Gras show throw me off my course. Go to ZBiotics/Red Flags to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Red Flags at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed by 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund you your money, no questions asked. But guess what? You won't have to do that because the stuff works. Just remember to head to zbiotics.com/Red Flags and use code Red Flags at checkout for 15% off. Happy drinking. What comes to mind also is, when K-Mag got that pole in Brazil, and, when someone starts and you get this like lucky qualifying, and then all of a sudden it can look like a failure, but it's just like that car, they were never supposed to be there in the first place. I guess I'm like, there's the beginnings of races can be when you're in a midfield team but you're at the front. It's like, does track position even matter? Like, of course track position matters, but are you like kind of playing it like this track position is actually bullshit? We just need to make sure that we're like on the long term, we're on the right tire, making the right decisions for like the 65 laps that we have ahead of us, instead of like trying to hold off, Lewis in a rocket ship.
I think the track position, you'll always take the track position. You take a much better qualifying if you can, like, gives you an easier lap one, an easier turn one, like all these, like the risk of getting involved in something just reduces. So you'll always take the good track position. If you can really work well with your drivers to say, we're not going to defend to Lewis, we're going to let him go, but we need to try and hold on to as much position as we can. So if you can get everyone working together, you will always take the track position. Like, it feels much better for a driver to come from the back, overtake a load of people in a slightly faster car, even if he finishes P8th, than it does to start and pole and still finish P8th. So you're always trying to manage this, like, the driver will feel like he's done a much better job if he comes through all the field and finishes there. Whereas if he loses 7 positions, even if the finishing position is the same, the driver will feel like it's not gone as well. So there's real, like, and that's sometimes why in a strategy meeting, you're trying to set like good expectation of where you think it will be, and trying to really look at, okay, these are the cars that we think are going to be strong because they've got good straight line speed. These are the cars that we really think, oh, okay, this one's going to be really difficult for us to manage. So, and most of the drivers are pretty good on that because they've been racing for so long. But yeah, those are the bits. And even from a strategy point of view, even the pit wall, it feels better to come from the back. But you will always take the track position. If someone could say you could start and pole every race, I go, yeah, no problem, we'll do that.
Yeah, sure.
Were there ever any drivers where you're like, am I really going to tell this guy that his best outcome is 8th? Like, he's not going to want to hear that. He's going to want to go for it.
There's quite a few, and it depends on the driver, it depends on the situation. Like some drivers, particularly towards the end of the year when they've got their own agenda in mind. So maybe there's a certain number of points they wanted to reach. Like Checo always wanted to reach 100 points. Maybe there's a teammate they want to beat. Maybe there's someone else at a championship position they want to have. They've all got their own agenda. So to say, I don't know, in the last race of the year, oh, we don't think you can beat XYZ because of this, they're like, nah, like that's not just not what they want to hear. And it's a bit like any of us. Like some people, when you say it like that, that'll really drive them forward. Some people, it'll really get them down. It sort of depends on who you've got on the day, and what their particular strength or weakness is.
I'm curious about the relationship between yourself and your position and drivers. You've had, someone like Sebastian Vettel, who you said like kind of comes in with like a whole wealth of knowledge and opinions about strategy, versus another driver who might be more just like, yeah, tell me what to do and I'll go out there and do it. Did you have a preference of like a driver who was more involved, or a driver that kind of like could like let you do your thing? And I'm curious, like the most notably of like, you worked obviously with Button, but also Vettel and Checo. What was the primary differences between those guys?
I think Checo was probably more happy to sort of take on board whatever you said from a strategy point was best. He was definitely more into just going, well, you've done the numbers, let's see what it comes out with. So he was always pretty straight. He'd have reasonable opinion on which tyre he preferred, for example. But he was pretty easy to work with from that sense. I think selfishly, the person who just goes, yeah, I'm happy, let's do that strategy, and does whatever to make it work, that is definitely an easier position. Sebastian was definitely harder, and hard on everyone, I think. And I loved Sebastian. But he was really like, well, have you thought about XYZ? Have you looked at this? Sometimes he'd come in and go, have you looked at the race that was here in 1994? I was like, well, my data does go back that far, So then you'd have to go and try and pull it out. But he was really into his race, and he's really knowledgeable about it. So he would really push you to make sure you'd done enough work on it. And actually, I didn't mind that, because he then really understood the strategy. Like, I sat in lots of meetings with lots of drivers who are on their phone or whatever, and not like properly paying attention. Then you say like, what's plan A? They're like, I don't know. So like with Sebastian, it was always like, he knew, he knew all the other plans, and he knew every other driver's plan. And like, he would often come on the radio and go, looks like whoever's on like our plan B or whatever, like he was just really on it with all those. So you could give him a lot of information and he would retain it, and then he would give you a lot of good information back. So if you put the time in, you definitely got the benefit out. And not all drivers are like that. So I actually really enjoyed working. It was harder. Like, I worked much harder, but it was really good.
Who was on their phone? Can you say?
I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to, like, at one point you just see somebody just like, anyway, they get distracted, or I think the worst thing is like, because they take a lot of information, right? And the meetings aren't fun,
Sure.
you know? Like, for an engineer, a meeting's fun. Like, for a driver, it's not so much fun. I think the thing that happened most often is we'd be sat in the office doing a meeting and like the F2 or the F3 would be on. So they'd be like watching the TV for the F2 or F3, and you'd be talking and you'd know they hadn't heard you. So it got to a point where we had to turn the TVs off so that they wouldn't watch the F2 or F3.
Like, oh,
yeah, exactly. It's like what I said wasn't that exciting, so I don't think you're listening.
I was listening. We're doing the T stop. God, go back on.
But I think, you know, and that just means that you get to know your driver. You work with them for so long, so you get to know the drivers that you go and speak to after the meeting, make sure they've taken it all in. Like, some drivers will pay way more attention to your one-to-one conversation than they will to the meeting.
Bernie, can you at least tell us who is the king of looking like he wasn't listening and then you asked him and he actually was?
I'm gonna,
because that's me, by the way. That's me. That's everybody would be like, Matt, what did I just say? Because I just like look like I don't care.
I'm going to say that again. That is probably Seb. He is probably the one that he's often like looks really distracted, but then he will recite something like, and you're like, oh, okay, fine.
I see.
Yeah, me and Seb, just two great
to see him. Yeah.
All right. Well, I got a question, Bernie. You know, you had a lot of success with one Checo Perez, and then you're partially responsible for his time in Red Bull. Do you feel guilty about that? Do you feel good about that?
No, I think
what happened to him? What happened to the guy?
Well, I think like I'm really glad he got the drive. You know, when he left us or was leaving towards the end of 2020, it wasn't clear where I was going to go. And like I'd worked with Checo previously at McLaren. I'd worked with him all his time at Force India. He'd made a lot of strategies work. You know, he made a lot of strategies really work. And as for Red Bull, like I can't really comment on what's exactly going wrong there, but like it's a bit frustrating in that he's been in that car for so long against Verstappen. I think he's Verstappen's longest running teammate. Obviously, in the past, we've given Red Bull a lot of flack for getting rid of teammates too quickly. So, you know, they work with Checo for a long time. But, you know, from a whole package, be it, does the car need to be substantially changed from what Vettel drives? And everyone that we've put against Vettel, that would appear to be the case. So did that not happen? Did they not work so well together as a group? Like, surely they could have improved the performance year on year, race on race, like, and there's been real glimmers of it going well. Like, for me, Checo has this really good mental strength. You know, he's lots of family with him at races. It's often quite hectic, but he's got a lot of support there. So he always seemed like he's the first person to come into the office and say, oh, that was a crap qualifying because we went out in Q1 or whatever. Like, how are we going to win the race? Like, he's the first person to turn that around, even before I've done that. So I find it, you know, Red Bull as a team potentially need to really look at that second seat. Like, how do they get whoever is in that second seat working? What changes need to be made to the car, the people around? Like, nobody has come close to Verstappen. Now, maybe Verstappen, and we don't know. It's really hard to benchmark drivers against drivers. Like, Verstappen is obviously phenomenal at what he does. You know, he is ruthless and relentless at his work, and everyone that I know that works with Verstappen loves him. So the impression on the outside that he's not a nice guy, I think, is like false, because everyone that's worked with him loves him. Now, it's easy to love a driver when they're fast as well, but Red Bull really need to get that second seat working to continue winning constructors, whoever is in it. So I'm not quite sure where it's gone wrong, but it's a pity to see Checo go.
Well, that's the interesting thing you just said about, like, with Vettel, like, you know, setting up the car differently. It seems like what we can understand is that, you know, Checo wanted the same spec as Max with regards to how the car was set up. And that's a spec that, like, works for Max and maybe doesn't work for anybody else. So is that, I mean, is that the performance engineer who's making that call? I know ultimately maybe Checo made that call, and maybe the pride went before the fall with that. But is that what you would maybe if you're in that position? If tomorrow you're working for Red Bull and you're trying to set up Liam Lawson for the most amount of success this year, coming in with only the handful of races that he's had, what would your thoughts on that be?
Yeah, there are very few teams in the pit lane where the same setup is working for both drivers. That's quite rare, I think. Drivers have their little nuances, what they like, how steady they like to be on braking, what their throttle. So it needs to be specific to the driver, I think is the first thing. And we've seen it a few times even this year. I think with Hamilton more than anyone, we've seen these frantic changes between P3 and qualifying where they're changing the car, changing the setup quite quickly. And it's the drivers, as much as they are very strong, give very strong feedback at times of how the car's reacting. They're not engineers. So sometimes it's for them to explain the problem, but it's for someone else to come up with the setup. So I think you need to be a bit strong at times and say, this is what we're doing. And same applies to all things like strategy. Often drivers will go, I want to start in the soft tyre because it's going to be quicker at the launch. It's well, that's an idiot thing to do. So we're not doing that. And you need to sort of direct, and that's it. I read a really interesting article a long, long time ago from an engineer I worked with in my very, very early McLaren career. And he suggested that some of the easiest drivers to work with were drivers where their English was very poor. The reason being that they would spend a lot of time describing their biggest problem because they couldn't describe all of the problems. So they would just describe their biggest problem. And therefore, as an engineer, you could get into working on that. So you had this, they weren't listing all the little things that were niggling them. It was just if we fix this one thing, that's going to find me the most lap time. And actually, it's a bit, it's a bit like that. But yeah, it's a bit of a pity that they've not tried to get that working better. And
they all speak English.
They all speak English.
Yeah,
which is good for me because I can't speak anything else. So it's positive, right?
But so getting back to drivers as teammates, when you have a situation like McLaren, when it's both our drivers are equal and we treat them all equally, but you've said in your book, the drivers might be equal, but there's only one optimum strategy. How do you negotiate that in a team like McLaren? And we've seen it kind of go wrong a couple of times where they should have double stacked Oscar, and I think it was in Silverstone. And they've had a couple of situations like that where parity got in the way of optimization.
Yeah. So I think that different teams have different, we call them rules of engagement, different ways of working it. I think the majority of teams have this idea that the driver that's ahead on track has first call on the pit stop. So whoever that might be. And the main reason for that is the driver that's ahead is probably your best chance of scoring the most points. So that's one of the rules that teams try to engage, or a lot of teams engage. Some teams will have a rule, particularly in the second half of the season, where one driver, in the Lando Oscar case, one driver is more likely to score championship points or to win the championship. So we're going to slightly prioritize things differently. You need to be really clear going. So the first thing is you need to be really clear going in. You need to be really clear in the briefing. Everyone needs to be really on board with it. That's not easy to get across because drivers are selfish. Drivers want the best for the driver, and often not the best for the team. Whereas most of the teams, their bonuses paid on team position. So it's quite an interesting nuance, really. Some teams will have other things like the person who's got the most championship points will get the upgrades first, or will have choice of where to go in qualifying, or Mercedes do qualifying week about across drivers. So there's lots of different rules that, I know we've heard this year a lot of paprika. I can't even say that word. Paprika rules?
Paprika?
Paprika rules?
Papaya rules.
Papaya rules. Papaya rules. Why can I not think of that?
Paprika rules sounds good.
I mean, you know what? The rules were spicy, so paprika is actually maybe a little bit more appropriate, but yes.
So we've got those sorts of things going on, but they exist in every team. It's just that teams don't often discuss it on the radio, and they're definitely not discussing it in the media. But there will be rules like, who's got a first choice of pit stop? If we've got different strategies, what happen? Some teams even have rules of, if we need to switch the cars, this is what we're going to say to you. This is where we want you to switch the cars, like blah, blah, blah. So there's a few things that'll go on in the background. It is difficult. I think that potentially McLaren were caught out because Oscar was better than expected. I think last year he'd been pretty good, or not last year, like 2 years ago, he'd been pretty good at qualifying, but lacking a little bit in the race. This year he really stepped up in the race, and I think they weren't quite ready for it. What's going to be really interesting is how they start 2025. What I expect to happen is they're going to start on an even footing. Whoever's ahead gets a choice of pit stop, etc. And then at race 5 or 6, look at the championship position and go, right, okay, This is that's what I expect to happen. Let's see.
You're a performance engineer. You were one. How do you anticipate his learning curve to increase to a level where he'll be there in year where Oscar will be there in year 3? His mother listens to this podcast, by the way, so just be careful what you say. So no, but seriously, like, because people are saying, like, he took a leap in year 2, but he still is not quite there with the qualifying consistently. Well, you think that? What do you think he's missing, and do you think he can get there in year 3?
So I'm going to start with, I'm a big fan of Oscar. But what I was going to say is, I think that Oscar's showing real talent, and a lot of drivers show real talent in qualifying. He can do quick qualifying laps. And where he's been lacking, in my opinion, is his race pace. So how he manages the tyres, how he keeps degradation low, how he's able to manage a full race stint. Now, between 23 and 24, he took a real step in that, I think. And I think it's very difficult to teach a driver to be quick in qualifying. But it is possible to teach a driver to manage a tyre in the race. It is possible to show them where they should be lifted, how they should be managing it. So his race pace will improve and continue to improve. So I think that this year, a bit more consistency in qualifying, which I don't think was that far away. And he was definitely quick at qualifying. So a bit more speed in qualifying, and then a bit more focus on how he's doing the race. And his engineers at McLaren will have been working all winter, going through which races he was furthest away from Lando in the race. What's the difference in driving style? How can he improve that? They'll bring lots and lots into it for this year. So he'll go into this year, for a lot of races, fully prepared on what he needs to do a little bit better. So I don't see any reason why his improvement curve is going to stop.
What about, we just brought up McLaren, their driver battle there. Obviously, the most high-profile one going into 2025 is Lewis and Charles. How do you see that kind of playing out? I mean, similarly, there's maybe going to be a quality difference if Lewis kind of continues in that same kind of lacking on Saturday. Where do you see that how do you see that shaking out?
I think it's going to be a really interesting one to watch. I think the challenge of Lewis stepping into a Ferrari shouldn't be underestimated. He's never driven a Ferrari engine. So real simple things like how the engine works, how the modes work, how the harvesting works, how the deployment works, they're all different, right? We hear different terminology on the radio. Instinctively, where he pushes the buttons is going to be different. So I think there's going to be big differences in the car that's going to be a challenge for Lewis. He's going to enjoy it, embrace it. I think Lewis really embraces a challenge. I think he does his best work when he's been pushed quite hard. But again, it's going to be this big shift in culture. Ferrari operate quite differently, I think. It's all different personnel, all different engineers. So can Lewis take the step in qualifying to make sure he's there on race day to get the right decisions come his way? And he's been part of this team. Mercedes have totally worked around Lewis for such a long time, and suddenly it's not his team anymore. So, I think there's a lot I'm excited to see how that pans out. You know, I wasn't expecting it last year, but I'm excited to see how it pans out.
What is the difference between driving the different? I know you just kind of you briefly touched on it, but like I'm like, are the engines that different? I guess maybe they are. I guess like the overheating, is it just like you mentioned different modes when you engage them? What are the biggest differences between switching an engine provider?
Well, I guess the first thing I guess for me to say is I've spent all of my time working for Mercedes engines as well, or a Mercedes engine car. But you know, different engines have different ways of harvesting the power that they need and then deploying that power. How they do it differently between qualifying and the race, how much is automatic and how much the driver needs to interact with, how much they need to, let's say, what they need to do in a cool down lap. So, you know, how much harvesting they need to do. The combination between that and the tires is quite complicated. So I think there's a lot to learn in terms of, and I think engines in particular, gearboxes probably not so much, because I think they all operate in a pretty similar way. But I think there are potentially big changes in that. And there may be other things like how the Ferrari talk about their setup, how they what their suspension is in the car. Like there's so much of the car is bespoke to each team. Now there's obviously some generic things that we all aware of. But I think there will be challenges there. And just, you know, we've had it in the past where we've changed steering wheel for a driver. And if you're used to always pressing DRS with your thumb on the top left, and suddenly that becomes a radio button, like I've lost count of the drivers that have stepped into a car and been pressing the radio at the point they should be pressing DRS or whatever the case may be, because we've changed around the buttons on the steering wheel. Like Ferrari obviously have a degree of customization that they will try and do. They will try and make Lewis as comfortable as he can. He'll be doing loads of simulator run-ins. He's obviously running in Italy at the minute. But it is that like instinctive reaction to things that it's going to take time. It's going to take time to get through that. You know, we've seen it in the past, you know, simple stuff. We've seen people stop on the wrong pit box more than once.
Lewis. Yeah, I think Lewis did that.
Sebastian's done it. Like lots of people have done it. So we just need to get past that.
I see.
Yeah, there's a great moment where LeBron James set a pick on like against his own team. I think it was like he was on the Cavs, but he set a pick for the Heat because he had been playing for them for so long. Do you miss it?
Yeah, I do miss it.
Why'd you walk away?
Because I didn't want to do 23 races. I wanted to not miss so many weddings and birthdays and life events. So yeah, I do miss being on the pit wall. It's tough. Like I know that people on the outside think, oh, it must be like a brilliant life, and it is. There's aspects of it that I absolutely loved. I loved all the traveling that we did for so long, but I did like 9 years I only did 22 races actually ever. But it's a lot of life commitment, and I just wanted a chance to sort of do something else.
So when you do races for Sky, how many are you doing currently?
10.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And then, so where do race engineers, performance engineers, strategists go when they die, when they're not, they don't all work for Sky. So when most of them burn out or want to do something else and they're not Bernie Collins or Ruth Buscombe, what happens to them? Where do they, is there a farm upstate for them? Where do they go?
It's a bit like that. Well, I think the first thing to say is a lot of them are lifers. There's a lot of people that will work in the pit lane and will need to be physically removed from the pit lane at some point in the future. So there's a lot of people that do it for a long time. There's a lot of people that tend to go back and do factory support, be factory based. So they might still support the race weekends from the factory. They might get more involved in car design or vehicle dynamics or the simulator or whatever. So you get a lot of engineers that go back to do factory support type roles. So that's generally the most trodden path.
I see. So you kind of stay within this. There's no like other industry. You kind of stay within F1 for forever.
Yeah, like some people will go to different industries for sure. But the majority stay racing. I think it's hard to get away from the racing background when you've done it for so long.
Bankers, we are stoked to continue our partnership with Ricky. The best canned alcoholic beverage on the market just got bigger and better. Ricky has a 7% ABV, and they've just launched 24-ounce big boys with 3 shots per can, which is absolutely absurd. The flavors are all of your favorite cocktails packaged in a glorious, reasonable can. Get 3 times as drunk for just under $4. Ricky's where it's at. And, this weekend, I'm up in the Berkshires with my girl, and the only thing better than being in this beautiful, beautiful scenery is Ricky. So you best believe I'm bringing the big boy cranberry Rickies with me, baby. So head to rickyspirits.com to find out where to get Ricky near you, and follow Friday Beers and Ricky Spirits to stay up to date with upcoming Ricky contests and giveaways. All right, we've got some rapid fire kind of questions. We got some fan questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay, what's scarier, live TV or real-time pit wall call?
Real-time pit wall call.
Okay. What's harder, a season on the pit wall or doing coverage or writing a book?
Pit wall season.
Okay. Which race has the best fans?
Oh. Probably Japan. Japan, actually. Yeah, 100%.
What's the first race that you went to?
As a fan?
Any fan, or if you went there before you started working in it?
I didn't do any races before I worked in F1. I'd never been to an F1 race before I worked in F1, so I went to Silverstone for a test.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Favorite? Do you have a favorite track?
For the track itself, for the layout, probably Brazil. For the overall experience, like the track, the city, the people, Canada.
Oh, nice. Favorite interview that you've done?
Well, I interviewed Checo. It was the only real driver one I've done in Holland a few years ago. And that was like my first sort of driver interview. And because I'd worked for him for so long, it was good. So yeah, I think that was good.
Do you have a pre-air ritual? Do you have any superstitions before?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Do you have a nickname that's been given to you by your fellow presenters?
I best not say that on the podcast.
Okay.
Just because if I say a nick, it's not even bad. But if I say a nickname on here, then that will become my name in real life as well.
Become the name.
Yeah.
Okay. What in your opinion was the best strategy call of 2024?
Ooh. Oh, I don't know. So just to share, my memory's really bad, so I need to go and look at all the data. So I'll go and look at all the race traces, then I'll tell you.
We'll wait.
Yeah. We are checking. Checking. Okay, this is about your colleagues at Sky. Who do you always learn something from?
Well, many of them, but probably most Martin Brundle.
What's one thing that you feel like, is there anything that comes to mind of a thing that you that he opened your eyes to?
No, he gave an interview recently saying it was about how bringing the TV or bringing a little bit into people's lives and stuff. And for me, obviously, having not watched that much F1 because I've always been on the pit wall, it was a really interesting way of thinking about it.
So you weren't a fan. So you weren't a fan of F1 before?
No, I was. What I mean is just when you're on the pit wall for 9 years, I'm not watching the race at home.
Right. Is he as sassy and private as he is on the grid?
He's lovely. He's not as sassy as he is on the grid. He's a very lovely, genuine person.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we definitely love him. Okay, who has the best style?
Oh, fashion-wise, probably Nats.
Okay, who would bail you out of jail?
Oh, I like to think any of them.
Okay.
All of them.
If you have to make one call, you're in jail, you have one phone call, who are you calling?
Anthony Davison. He's very reliable.
Okay, who would be the best at planning a bachelor or bachelorette party?
Oh, probably Naomi.
Okay. Who would be the best F1 strategist of the team? Besides
Oh,
yourself, obviously.
probably Ant again.
Okay.
What driver would you like on the grid now? Would you like? What are the drivers you'd make a strategy team out of?
Alonso.
Alonso. That's what Ruth said.
He knows what's going on. Alonso knows.
Okay.
I've never even worked with him, but I just on his radio, he knows.
Okay.
Okay. And who would be the most competitive at a work karting event?
Oh, Crofty.
Really?
Yeah, he's
Really?
competitive.
Interesting.
You mean competitive as in the best at karting, or you mean competitive as in would want to win the most?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person who would be the most competitive is probably Crofty. The person who'd probably be the best is probably Ant again, or Karun.
Love it.
They're the drivers.
Love it. Okay, we've got some fan questions here.
Cool.
Okay, this is from Aditya Burley. Do you think that AI is going to replace F1 strategists in the future?
I hope not, but who knows? I hope not, though. I think I hope not.
Who was your favorite driver to work with? This is from 77th Psychopath.
Oh,
I'm sorry about our fans.
probably I really enjoyed working with Sebastian.
Besides F1, which motorsport is most interesting to you from a strategy perspective? This is from Ash Lau.
Oh, from a strategy, I probably don't watch enough other motorsport from strategy perspective, but actually this year I went to MotoGP and I really enjoy. There's more strategy in that than I thought in terms of which tires are running and their fueling and stuff. So I enjoy learning. So yeah, that's the one I'd like to learn more about.
What is the most stressful race for you as a strategist? This is from
Monaco.
Cole. Why? I feel like Monaco's so like there's actually no strategy, right?
Well, I think because like in Monaco, if you miss the pit stop or the safety car or whatever, like you can never recover from it. Like other races, if you're a lap late or a lap too early, there's a chance in the next 50 laps you recover. In Monaco, it's like, that's it. It's now or never.
When that, what was it, in 2022, when Charles he was on pole and then the rain came and they brought him in and then Carlos was already there. They did the double stack, but the timing was all messed up. That was, but you were still at Aston Martin at that point, right? Or no?
What year was that?
22.
I think it was 22.
Yeah, so I was still there then. Yeah. So I think it's just one of those ones where there's so much pressure on it. And the decision, like we were saying earlier, there is a really definite right and wrong answer. And everyone's hoping for better than you end up having. It always feels that way. So yeah, I think it always felt like a tough, high pressure one.
So can we get one Vijay Mallya story? Anything?
Well, so Vijay often in my time wasn't actually at the track.
He was hiding. So no, where was he?
Yeah,
he was hiding. He was hiding.
That's so disappointing. Now, what was the most broke moment in your time? Like you're like, wow, we've got no money. Like, holy crap, this is.
I thought you meant me personally.
No.
I don't know. Like, I think there was a few years we were really struggling to try and get some software, some new kit or something, and it was just like always a no. And it felt like it's quite hard.
So there was no like moment where like the elevators are broken, you're taking the stairs, like
no, there wasn't. There wasn't like when I moved from McLaren to Force India, it was a big shock. Like their factory was like night and day different, so it was a big shock. But I sort of, I knew who I'd been dealing with and the people and stuff. I think, so yeah, you sort of, yeah.
There's this moment in Moneyball where like a player goes from like the rich team to the broke Oakland A's, and he goes to like get a soda from the machine, and he realizes that he's got to pay for it, and he's like so scandalized that he's got to pay for a soda, and it's like, welcome to Oakland.
Yeah, well, it's like McLaren had hundreds of seats in their canteen, and like Force India had like 12 or something. I was like, wow, like this is madness. But yeah, I sort of knew, so it was okay.
Were there perks of that? Like, what was the what was the silver lining of being at a team like that versus a bigger one like McLaren?
I guess the ultimate one was I ended up as head of race strategy with no strategy experience.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
because there was no one else to do it. So it was like, you're it. Which I would have never done. You know, McLaren would have never employed me for that role. Maybe gradually, but
right.
I've heard you speak. You know, F1's a male-dominated business, but I've heard you talk about like how strategy is sort of attracted more women than the other sectors of F1 proportionally.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
I think there's a few women that aren't engineers that are like mathematicians or whatever. So it's not necessarily engineering that's feeding into it. I think a lot of it starts off more factory based than it does like a lot of people who do race engineering, for example, start at like GT3 or like these other sports. So maybe that, but yeah, it's not clear really.
Okay.
Who's got the best strategy team in F1 right now?
Red Bull.
What do they
just lost their head of strategy, didn't they?
He is leaving, but I think maybe at the end of this year.
So you've got this season's coming up. Do you have any predictions? Who do you think's the favorite for both constructors and drivers this year?
I think it has to be McLaren. Like, given how they ended last season, I think they have to be the favorites for the beginning of this season. Yeah, I think so. They should be. They should feel pretty confident going into this.
Who you got for the drivers?
It's got to be Lando. I think, given how he finished the end of last year. I think.
Okay, I like it, Bernie. I like it. And yeah, okay. So you're going to be doing 10 races this year for Sky Sports F1, and anything else? Where can the people find you?
Bernie.collins.1 at Instagram.
Hell,
boom. Yeah.
And Sky Sports.
You've written a book as well.
I've done a book called How to Win a Grand Prix,
right.
which has gone really well. So yes, feel free to pick that up. There's loads of strategy tire chat in there.
Go out,
nice.
Go, and if you want to actually learn something, go Bernie's book. We start this podcast off with Was Venkas, which is a tribute to Gunther Steiner. Could you honor us with a goodbye, Venkas?
I will try. Goodbye, Venkas.
Yes.
Goodbye,
Venkas.
Thank you.